okay, Michael, is that fatalistic? Is it all over? Are we done for?
No, there's something else rising.
Right, because the thing is that very need to upscale the weaponry shows you that something else is taking place.
It's in response to something.
It shows you that, yeah, that the other is about to make its presence known. What it also means is that all this other stuff, remember we talked about the girls getting sick of the cosmetics and
yes.
sick of what TV is giving? Then on another level, on this higher level, even part of us is getting sick of the simulacra. Because an idea of reality can only last a certain amount of time. We talked on a previous interview and we mentioned that evil has within it the seeds of its own destruction.
Yes.
Anything corrupt, unjust is bound to fail, is bound to crumble. We're in that very age now. So all this new machinations and moving and saber rattling and all these new machinations of the dictators is because they know that the ground from under them is changing. If we don't realize that, we lose hope and they win again. You see, so what we have to realize is that the forces of nature can never be defeated. They literally are negentropic. There is no on switch. That only exists in the ego. That's the ego world, and that's the world of the technology that has on and off buttons and controllable components and programmable components because of this ancient. And goodness knows that there's a whole other question of even how ancient it is. But even leaving that aside, an ancient antipathy, not between male and female, as it has been. I'll go easy. I'll say somewhat misguidedly represented in front of us. The war has been between masculine and feminine, which is within each of us. It's not just a polarized thing at all, and it's to suspend or permanently delay the ultimate chemical wedding, which is the reason why we exist. Man on this planet, Aristotle called it entelechy, the natural movement of this to that. When you plant a potato, it becomes a potato, not a daffodil. When you plant an oak, it becomes an oak, not an elm. Within the potentiality, the seed is the end. And he used the Greek word entelechy to say, in the seed is its final goal. It's the fractal people know all about this. They've worked it out now, right? So the thing is that also psychologically, biologically, and humanly, it's the same. Within the human being is the God. Within the human being is the Buddha. Within the human being is the enlightened one, the magus, the wizard, the great one, the high one, the elder. And whether you like it or not, and no matter how many boulders you put on top of it, no matter how many dead ends you go down, no matter how many distractions you get into, and this was brought out beautifully in the movie Zardoz by John Berman, no matter how much technology you build, no matter how many walls, no matter how many vortexes, no matter how many lies, no matter what you do, that entelechy is going to continue. And no matter what kind of psychic dictatorship, global village, silicon revolutions you create, you cannot stop that process because it's way deeper than thought. It's way deeper than mind.
It's deeper than emotion. It's something that is emoting the emotion.
These are only the branches and flowers of something infinitely deeper. Heidegger put it this way. He said that thinking is one step later than being. You have to exist before you can think. I mean, in one way, it's a no-brainer. But unfortunately, even the greatest philosophers spent hundreds of years trying to work and they never got there. And then he said, then reason, which is an attribute of thought, is one step later again. So how can reason, and how can even thinking, know the mysteries of being? It's like a 3-year-old knowing its mother has a personality and a love life and a youth and all these interests. The child is incapable of understanding that. It's just not possible. So all the scientism, all the religions are attempting to use reason, and I'm not against reason, I'm actually an advocate of reason, but within a practical sphere of influence. I also know where reason's limits are.
Yes, and not to the exclusion of the being.
Right. What has happened is that women, men have been forced to conform to very impractical forms of reason, and to split. Then we have another split: reason and emotion, or mind and heart. Once you've started one dualism, it just keeps going forever until you come back to these fundamental understandings. So getting back to what we were talking about, this negentropic intellectual movement cannot be altered. Big Brother and anyone who buys into that mode of thought, in other words, anyone who shares their psychopathy, is deadly afraid of it. And I'll tell you why. It's because before you can have a chemical wedding, you must experience a chemical divorce. It's the opposite of normal life. First you get married, then you get divorced. Right? This is opposite. In spiritual terms, everything must die before you can inherit her. You got to meet Shiva before Shakti bothers opening the door.
Right.
The religions go, well, that's a bit of a problem. I know. We'll dawn ourselves up as Shakti. we'll have all of her trappings.
To somehow bypass that necessary step.
Yes, to create
to create the illusion that we can bypass that step.
And I believe now that's becoming, it's not my belief, it is becoming unsustainable to everyone all over the world. And so their gig, they're trying to think, what are we going to do now? We're going to have to sell out and move shop. Oh, Age of Aquarius and Age of Awakening. Oh, damn, we might be out of business soon. So in came the New Age. In comes a bunch of other bogus spinner rack stuff. In will come a regression, like we talked about earlier, to hardened forms of religion.
Yes.
Because when the softer, more egalitarian form, I'm not all against religion, see, but once the egalitarian models start weakening, there's a fear reaction, and, as we've seen.
Go to the safe.
And then you have Big Brother will bring out a champion like a George Bush or an Obama with a big smile on their face and a big stick behind their back to make sure that they egg you on to conform or collectivize in yet another way. My work deals a lot in all these elements that make you collectivize. So the chemical divorce is part of the package of spiritual evolution. Shamans knew this, the elders, the druids knew this. We talked about the druids before. One of their ideologies was that you have to die to everything before she will come to you. Now, who is she going to come to first? Well, she's a she, so I would assume that the feminine is in closer ontological proximity than the masculine. The masculine is going to get it as well, but in this spiritual, I hate to use the word hierarchy, but whatever, in this continuum, the feminine is the most receptive. If you study the 20th card of the tarot, Aeon, it's also called Judgment in the Rider-Waite deck. And if you also pull out card 6, known as the Lovers, you'll see something very interesting. And that is there's 3 figures, a woman, a child, and a man. And each time it's the woman's head who's looking at divinity, and the man is looking at the female. In both of those cards, divinity is either blowing a trumpet or, in other words, bringing down spiritual energy. And in the mountains in the back or whatever, the woman's head is the one above. She is the divine mediator. Remember we said what is it the woman's duty was, etc., etc. She is the mediator or conduit for that knowledge. What has happened since the advent of the patriarchal religions is that's been cut off drastically. They murdered witches, they murdered anyone, any elders. In my country and others they did it. And they stopped that flow. And then let's shift focus again and look at it psychologically, and it brings me right back to what you were talking about. If the female and the feminine, and let's embrace also say the woman is the conduit for this divine revelation, and it will reach the male masculine mind. However, the message for this age right now is that the woman first has to fill her own chalice up before she can
to really truly embody the feminine once again.
Yes, because once you say conduit, well, that's the sort of like a neuter thing. Oh, I'm just a conduit. No. It's a conduit, but first you must be imbued in it first. Mm-hmm. So in other words, women are now the first ones to be tested by guess who? Her. The nameless one. So your anger, the thing that you're noticing in the women is the beginning of women being recalled back. Demeter is calling Persephone out of the underworld. She's saying, remember the job? Stop filing the nails. We got work to do.
Yeah.
Oh, what was that again, right? So the awakening of the feminine, which is the Arthurian, after they find the Grail, the world comes to life again, right? But look at the much death and winter had to go through before they inherited it again. And the chalice is in the keeper of who? 3 maidens, right? So here we go, but I believe that the call goes out to the feminine, and includes men. The feminine man is included, but to the female as well. Therefore, if the females of the world are found wanting, as they possibly may be, then we have a problem. We have to resolve that issue. That's another thing to look at. But if all goes well, and women, because they have it ancestrally, start looking and answering this call, and they're able to work with us, then comes in the kind of energy that is required, you see, to build the roots, the foundation. Pluto excavates and gets rid of all the dirt and all the rubbish and all the nonsense, but then you have something to fill, you have a hole to reseed. That's when that feminine, liquid, natural energy needs to flow. It's not man's job. I said in the talk, women bring children, boys and girls, into the world. Men prepare the world fit to live in for those children. So we have different roles, different dynamics. Feminism blurred all this on purpose. They made a carrot to make it, and I'm not doubting them. Women did need that level of, empowerment.
Well, there was a strengthening that had to occur.
I've read, I studied them for years. I mean, I'm a big fan of Camille Paglia and people like that. But the thing is that I always sensed that behind it was a deeper, darker agenda.
Yes.
And this from this dark poison higher up, using certain women who are from these royal families to teach the women give them a carrot, so that ultimately a greater, darker evil could be done, which is to turn off the female from her spirituality, so that she ceases to be this conduit, because they're ahead of us. They know what's happening. They know what's coming. They know that the Pluto is coming to that energy to excavate, to deconstruct, and then they know that where's that liquid, vital, mercurial, silver energy going to come from, right? This has been spoken about in umpteen films as well. The nucleus of the sun and the moon. There's many ways of languaging this. In the yin-yang symbol, in the white is the black, in the black is the white. You know, the nucleation.
Yes.
Almost saying, well, then what is blackness and what is whiteness? You see, it's an incredible thing. The whole idea of all magic, all ritual, all yoga, all spirituality was the nucleation. The priests got in. The Buddhists is false. It's all false. It's just masculinization under another name. Hinduism, you know. Christianity. Look at Islam. Look at Judaism. I can show you chapter, line, and verse of their hatred of women, their denigration of the female,
yes,
and also of the feminine, while they're walking around in flowing robes.
Right.
With
Interesting,
the long
trying to usurp that role falsely.
Usurping it, absolutely. They did it in the goddess. The Druids were entirely wiped out.
Yes.
Because of this very purpose. Yes. In fact, I wish we could get into it. There's many great stories that even predict that this was going to happen. So what now has to be the message is the woman has to learn how to turn inward and embrace and integrate all that dark, allegedly dark energy that they're feeling. They have to marry it.
Yes.
They have to let it flow over them. Own it. Right.
And this includes owning the wildness of that uncertainty, because these feelings have to go to a different level than how they've been integrated before.
Right. But what happens if the architects of control step in and go, no, we know how to canalize it. What we want from you is more man-hate.
That's
feminism. Feminism 2.0.
Yes.
Oh, gee, it's going to happen again. What are we going to do, pal? What are we going to do, guys? Then they say, well, we just deflected like we did before. Women blame men. We will now show you the object of your hate. It's your fathers again. And then the whole vicious cycle will start again. But more than that, women have learned to hate themselves. As we said, the whole media, the cosmetic stuff, is designed to put these absolutely unbelievably, actually they're psychotic, but on the surface they look gorgeous and wonderful and attractive and famous and glitzy. And then the woman can't, meet that model or whatever it is, the false model, and then they beat themselves up. So there's self-sadism there. Like I said, oppression and repression.
Yes.
You're repressing yourself, then there's oppression out there. And all of this is to stave off the real chemical wedding, so that the religions, the corrupt Saturnian, solar, Martian institutions remain as powerful as they've always been.
Go Pluto?
They don't want Pluto. Pluto represents the entire meltdown of their entire fabric. So
it sounds to me like you're feeling pretty hopeful about this. You're seeing that it's inevitable, that this reversal of everything that has been spun into motion by the architects of control ultimately will have to occur. It's nature. Nature will prevail.
It always does. And as we said, it's part of the mind. It's part of this early trauma that got us to have antipathy to nature. There's so many traditions that have language for this. I've kind of invented a new one, and I refer in my disciples to the Mysterium work. But really, it's really nothing new. It's coming out of existential psychology of Otto Rank and Erich Fromm and Viktor Frankl, and Freud to a certain extent. And it's just a re-languaging in modern terms of that when man was traumatized in his consciousness, that sort of set the ball of psychopathy rolling, and our civilizations are the product of that psychopathy. And the ego, it's almost like the ego had an evil twin, and that I call mysterium, which is the need to have fictionalized, phantasmagoric images of God, of reality, and so forth and so on. But without even getting into all of that, the essence of the ego, the root of the ego, and certainly the root of this mysterium concept, is antipathy to nature. And it's very simple to understand. When nature erupts around you and destroys everything, we're talking tidal waves, boulders falling from the sky, meteors, I can take you and point to them. Even they're in Ireland. The whole landscape was
all of it.
Right, we know that it's there. Carolina, Georgia is just pockmarked with it. There's been devastations on this planet that nobody could ever imagine. Obviously, you participated in that. They weren't just sitting in an easy chair watching it. And in the aftermath of that, which was itself thousands of years, it left such an antipathy that you rose up against us. You know, it's like the myth of hell actually is connected to all this. Siberian mythology says that the Northwest was the lands of the dead, the lands of the specters, the lands of the ghouls. So our race memory is filled with this, and unfortunately, an antipathy to nature itself came with that package. And we are so young. That was only, some people say 50, about 13,000, depend who you're listening to.
Right.
But even if it was 50,000 years ago, that's a blink of the eye historically.
Yes.
So we are not even in the beginning of the recovery of that to that trauma. Meaning that the Mysterium's wound, the wound that created the Mysterium and the ego, is very raw. The growth of technology comes out of that, the demeaning of the denigration of the feminine, the denigration of nature is all a product of all of this.
In an attempt to control our consciousness, so to speak.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Because it's fear, and fear creates defenses.
Fear, yes,
anxiety.
fear of the wildness of the natural law.
Inner anxiety.
And by the extension of that, as we started the conversation, the feminine aspect of ourselves represents that same regenerative kind of wildness that there's a need to control.
That's right. The feminine, so-called, is the only part of us, the remnant that's left. It makes the artists, makes the poets, makes the musicians. They're the ones who live on that little twilight zone. You know, like the ones like Roger Waters on the Wall said, they stand near the wall. You know, they're the little artistes. You know, there are those few who are still sort of ambivalent, and they're a bit sensitive and eccentric and all of that. And I think that to answer your question of whether I'm optimistic or not, is this. Yes, because we are in the process of healing. We have serious forces that don't want that healing to take place. But given time, and then time has its cycles, the 2012 is an expression of one rite of passage leading to another. You see, just like there was another one of these various astrological periods. These are cusp points. The one that's happening now is global and it's very powerful. It's very powerful because Pluto is directly involved in it, as is the Sun. They know this, so they denigrated recently Pluto to some rock floating in space.
Yes, I've noticed that.
What planet are we on?
Demote the planet if it gives you trouble.
There's a song by Black Sabbath. He said, they'll tell you black is really white, the moon is just the sun at night.
Yeah.
Tomorrow they'll be telling us the sun does, you know, it's the moon, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, Pluto.
That was funny, actually.
But that's an expression of this fear of the Plutonic here.
Yes.
Oh, I have no unconscious. I got no dirt. There's no skeletons in my closet. Forget it. Psychology is not important. But you heard it in that version, you know, to say Pluto, and Pluto's Shiva. And you're going to meet Shiva because Shakti's protected. And there's rites and rituals to go through before you enter that. Study all the mythology, study the Arthurian legends, study the Finn cycle, study the Zen, the trials. We get it easy today. Study all the rites of passage that a neophyte needed to go through before you could even have one modicum of it.
Yes.
Right? I mean, the bards had to memorize thousands of pieces of poetry and history and lineage to perfection, including the pauses of how you pause between the sentences. They had to play the harp till their fingers bled. They had to know the tree, plant the tree, nurture the tree, and cut the wood that made the harp. They had to tune the harp according to the Hertzian frequencies of the planets.
And what do we have to do?
We buy it on eBay. We buy it from Taiwan, right? Ready-made.
But what do we give up that they gained in that process?
We lost our connection to nature, and we lost the fact that death is in life. See, when you have direct participation in anything creative, you die as well as be born. You can't be fooled by some priest who's promising you a bromide after you're dead. Within the space of a breath, you've died. The breath, you die, you're reborn again. When you have an intimate, like farmers, anyone connected to the women, everyone connected to the cycle of nature is intimately aware that life and death is in every breath and every moment. We live in the simulacra where death is just something we don't even need to think about. It's not with us anymore. Just watch, Judge Dredd or Demolition Man or Equilibrium. You know, it's to, I don't want to think those evil thoughts. Give me something to take. Give me an injection. I feel bad today. You know that. George Lucas movie, or it was Francis Ford Coppola, THX 1138, right? Yeah. I feel bad. I'm not feeling good today. Give me more stuff. Give me more drugs. These darker emotions, it's been a massive psychology and misrepresentation. Even the words anger and violence have all been misinterpreted to us, misinformed, misapplied by psychopaths who themselves can't go there, never will, ever. And if I may, I'll give you a small anecdote of why. Sociopaths are known historically to never change, because in order to change, they will have to visit all the pain and suffering they've caused to every single individual that they've harmed. Do you remember in certain mystical traditions, they even make it a rule that you go back and say sorry to the people that you've hurt? It's based on this.
Yes.
Whether it's good or bad, we can argue later. The idea is that the sociopath will feel in the dead of night, after many years of psychology, or whatever, or even 2 seconds of revelation in their car one day. I don't know what the scenario might be. But the sociopath, to change his sociopathic ways, would have to, it's not negotiable, they would have to visit all the suffering they've caused to everyone that they have maliciously hurt and deceived throughout their whole life. Obviously impossible. It never happens.
Tedious process, and one that mathematically the odds are they're not going to do that.
So when we know that, we understand why they stay the way they are. It's too painful.
Yes.
Now, the more aware a person is willing to go through it. William Blake said, how can we have gone through hell and emerged unconsumed, right? The shaman knows he has to go through that hell of hells. You know, if you watch the movie Hellboy, there's all these alchemical traditions in this. V for Vendetta, where he purposely puts the girl into the shadow gallery and puts her through this unbelievably painful, deathly, morbid experience so she can be liberated and reinitiated into her, because there's that gray area again. You're not going to get it until you meet V, or Shiva, or the world, or yourself. Or in my tradition, it's Hern, Cernunnos, right? In every tradition we have this being, Merlin, I don't know, who it might be. You're going to meet the shaman. You're going to meet that guide who's going to, lead you through that gate. And even that gate is still a metaphor for something that happens biologically and so forth and so on. But until you go through that divorce, nothing will change. Now, the only thing that makes it different now is that instead of this being some little private thing that you're doing in your life with your teacher, the whole world is having to go through this now.
It's bubbling
moved
up through the surface of humanity.
Right. So the whole planet is being given this sort of opportunity to go through this, or at least some stage. I never rule out the individual work. You will always have to do it individually. But many of the levels, and maybe we should be thankful for that even. There's something weird about that. Maybe it's because planet Uranus energy is, Uranus rules groups. So where there's Uranian energy, there will be a collectivism with a small c movement. I think that these conferences are very much part of that.
Yes. Well, and if it can support
Your
the
show
individual,
is part of that.
And if it can support the individual going through this experience, yay.
Yeah. So I think there are certain protections and help and guidelines. But remember, the doctor doesn't get into the bed with the patient. The person who shows you the map can't walk the landscape for you. And that's the beauty. That's the journey. So it does, as the psychologist said, it will mean a reintegration with the unconscious mind. They're right. It will mean a re-understanding of what the ego is. It will mean a revisioning of what masculinity and femininity is in its purest sense. It's not the same as male and female. It will mean a falling in love with the word no. It's my favorite word. It has so much power, right? And it also means discovering that death is in life, every second, every minute, and embrace it, love its action on your life. By the way, it's going to happen to you whether you like it or not. You can resist it as much as you want, and then you'll have the cancers, and then you'll have the other, harder permutations of it, until you learn to go with it. Do you remember the very final scenes in the movie Dune by Frank Herbert wrote the book, but they made the movie? The very last scene is iconic for me, because just as the Sting character is about to knife the prince, you hear his voice saying, and I shall bend like a reed in the wind. And immediately there's this Bruce Lee zip, right, flips, and boom, just like magic. He turns it around. And that's that mutability and flexibility and sort of a Taoist Zen way. The Hopi say, let go of the banks of the river. It's all right. Let go of the oars. The boat knows where it's going, and certainly the river knows where it's going.
I love that
We spoke
saying.
about this before, right?
Yes.
So this is the challenge that people need to let go. My message to them is when you realize it's a lie, it's easy to let go. If you offer the monkey, there's in India, the monkeys, they come and they try to put their hand into the clay pots to grab the food, and they're so greedy that even when people are beating them with sticks, they won't let go.
Right.
They'll just hang on, no matter how many
and their
feeding
fists can't make it back through the hole.
When you bring a bunch of more gooey looking sweets, the hand releases immediately, and it goes for the thing. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Realize that you are holding on to something that's absolutely rotten. It's again in the movie Dune, where the priestess, the sorceress, makes the prince put his hand in the fear box. To scare the bejesus out of him, thinking it's all in the head, right?
Yeah.
So when we realize that what what we're avoiding is selfhood, which is golden, which is wonderful, which is who you are and who you're meant to be. The hand will release from the false. But trying to jackboot it out, philosophize it out, cajole people, you know, that will never work, because that's not the way the hardwiring is. You offer something better. Detachment is created.
The gooey plate of sweets.
Yeah, the gooey plate of sweets, which is the selfhood, and it's mitta. They call it in Indian the mitti, soma, but of a different kind, the real thing, right?
Not very
in the Vedas, it's there.
Yes.
It's in the Vedas. It's there. When he sits down under the tree, he finds himself, and he finds that the rivers that flow are his breath. Right, the trees that grow are his eyes. You know, there's a whole metaphor where he becomes one with everything that around him. And to use like Drumvalo, Melchizedek's, you know, parlance, the Merkaba aura is not your personal aura. Nature herself and all the universe is your personal aura. You own it. It's you. She belongs to you. You belong to it. That's the symbiosis, the chemical wedding. When we realize that's what we're heading towards, automatically you're Truman. And you just open the door in the sky and go, take it easy, guys. You know, your control doesn't work anymore because I've been immune. I'm immune now to every element of control. You can't control me because I'm immune. Bruce Lee would say, when I become so invulnerable to your kicks, I've won. It's the principle of Aikido. It's the principle of Jeet Kune Do. You become so immune to the virus that the virus dies of its own thing. The parasite drops off because there's no power of you. Fighting the virus is exactly what the virus wants. Remember in Fifth Element, the more you shoot at the star, the bigger it becomes?
Yes.
They're telling us this. The more you, in Zardoz, the beast we've conjured in our midst. Why did we conjure the beast in our midst? Instead of fighting it, you ask, why did it get created?
So let go of the banks, let go of the reed on the banks, let the river take us.
Right, and not everyone can do that. I'm not the fool. I'm a realist. A lot of people can't do that. My advice is then don't try to save them, because you'll be dragged down with them. I really mean this. I know it's horrible to say and people don't like it. But unfortunately, it's not going to become a living fact, because the vampiristic kind of person who's not done their homework spiritually, meaning sociopathic kind of creature, the first thing they're going to grab onto you like a Klingon on Captain Kirk's foot. Right, dragging him into the abyss along with himself. And
going back to women, we can be really bad at trying to pick up anybody.
Everyone can be.
Everybody can be, and so we don't need to be doing. I'm really clear on that. It took a few years to really get it, but I get now. There have been enough signs. There's been enough energy to move us in this direction that we need to understand it's up to us. We really need to, in essence, transform ourselves first. Right?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, but to do that, there's a divorce required to dispense with other teachers in the hard sense.
Yes.
They're only guides. And remember, what they speak is their truth. No matter how holy it sounds or how demonic it sounds, one thing you must know, it's their reality. Yeah. They're speaking for themselves. They are guides, but they can't walk the topography for you. You must do the adventure yourself. You must go. And as Professor Tolkien showed in his masterwork, even the lowest rung of the ladder, the most insignificant person, can do what the highest sorcerers and wizards cannot do. So it was a metaphor. So, and he was saying, don't beat yourself up. You know, realize that, because remember when in the story, when they're chosen to carry the ring, they can't believe it.
Yes.
They're thinking there's a mistake here. You got the wrong phone number here, right? And yet he's saying, no, you're the little ones who can get through, right? So it's a very complex metaphor, but it really represents the fact that the lowest person in society, as long as they realize who they are, their journey is also a realization that, remember, because I've said in all my work, do not think this is something external to you. All these challenges and obstacles that come up are there because it's part of your journey. It's not like, oh, I didn't realize this was happening to me. I've just learned that there's a big brother operating in the world. What am I going to do about it? It's not an external activity divorced from your personal life. Oh boy, I wish I could change the channel, you know. This is your spiritual life. This is the matrix of control into which you're born. You're to find the answer to that Gordian knot. You're to break the matrix if you can, right? And instead of, my message is, instead of going outward, you must turn within. That's where the secret is. It's within your own selfhood that the secret, lies.
Michael, this wasn't the conversation I had anticipated having with you when we first met a couple days ago, but I am thrilled because this has been beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah,
thank you.
It's always good to talk to you.
And vice versa.
Nice to see you too.
For more of Michael's work, you can go to terrascope.com for his vast array of knowledge on esoteric subjects from occult astrology to defining the dynamics behind the architects of control. You might also want to watch our previous interviews with him on the Irish origins of civilization. To continue looking into the reemergence of the feminine, you might also enjoy my interviews with Dr. Christine Page and Lucia Renee on unplugging the patriarchy. Until next time, thanks for watching CMN.